Well, let's talk more about that. Ministers drawing up plans to speed up the clearing of the names of hundreds of postmasters who were wrongfully convicted in the Horizon Post Office scandal. Mel Stride, the Work and Pension Secretary, is here with me now in the studio. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Described in the House of Commons last night by the Minister Kevin Hollerake as one of the greatest miscarriage of justices in our nation's history. What is the government doing to speed up help for those affected?
Yeah, it's really important that we do this because a lot of people clearly have suffered, not just financially, but in terms of their mental health and relationships and their standing in their local communities and so on. So what Kevin was able to announce yesterday is firstly an independent panel being set up to oversee payments, to make sure there's independent oversight of that. But very importantly, discussions that the Justice Secretary is now having with senior members within the justice system to see what can be done to expedite and accelerate those appeals. Now, that's not to say that we haven't already done a great deal. In fact, we've already made payments of £138 million to 2,700 people who have been victims of this terrible scandal. But there is more to do, but we recognise it's really important, and we are moving now at very considerable pace.
So there's meetings that you talked about between the Justice Secretary and the judiciary. Are they happening today? Are they happening this morning?
My understanding is that they are happening now. So this is something that is happening hour by hour. It's not something that's going to happen next week. It is happening right now. And we intend to move quickly. Well, I don't know. OK, let me clarify that. Whether they started at 6 o'clock this morning or 9 o'clock or whatever, I am absolutely confident that ongoing discussions are now occurring.
When are we going to hear back? The Minister said last night, hopefully by the end of the week. When will Parliament get an answer?
Soon. I mean, it'll be that order of timescale. Now, I can't obviously determine on the sofa with you today exactly when that's going to be, but it'll be of that order of time. Yeah.
The options that are out there, I mean, potentially the King could pardon everybody. There could be one big appeal that would clear everybody's name.
Yeah.
Or the CPS could take over the cases. What do you feel's the right option?
Well, I don't think I should be drawn into opining as to which way this should go, because it is a delicate matter. There are lots of issues around it, not least legal issues. So I think it's right, therefore, that Alex Chalk is going to have those very close discussions with senior judges and others in the legal system to make sure that we get the right solution. But the priority here, just to be really clear, is that things get speeded up and we come to a conclusion with this as soon as possible.
I mean, why can't the government just exonerate them all? We spoke to David Davis yesterday and he pointed out that, the fact that any case has been shown to have failed because the Horizon system was faulty makes all of the convictions unsafe.
Well, that may be the case, but I think nonetheless it's right that Alex Chalk and those in the legal system have an opportunity to really talk this through in detail to make sure we get the right solution. There are various options, and you've mentioned 3 of them there that people have suggested. There may be others, but I think the important thing is that, albeit it's just going to be a matter of a few days now, that those discussions are detailed and come to the best possible way of achieving this outcome.
So speedy action on that. Compensation, of course, is the other issue that a lot of those sub-postmasters are still waiting for. Fujitsu, should they be footing the bill for this compensation, do you think?
Kevin Hollerake, in his statement to the Commons yesterday, touched on this in as much as he made it clear that should it really just be the taxpayer that is on the hook for the costs here? And I think the answer to that question will be driven by probably the conclusions of the independent inquiry that's been going now for some time.
But that kicks it into the grass, doesn't it?
Well, no, because, I mean, it started in 2020. It is some years in. I don't think it's going to be that long before that concludes. I think it's sometime this year. And one of the questions that inquiry will be answering will be around culpability. Who knew what, when, who acted in ways that they shouldn't have acted, who failed to act where they should have acted, and so on. And that will include Fujitsu. And I think at that point, we will know what Fujitsu's role was in this, and then ministers can take the appropriate conclusions and the appropriate action. But I think it's certainly the case, Jane, that we're not going to be in a position where we're simply saying, oh, well, it's the taxpayer that's simply going to be picking up the bill here. But we do need to see what the independent inquiry says.
The other wider question is the fact that the Post Office were able to bring these prosecutions at all, rather than the Director for Public Prosecutions. Again, David Davis yesterday suggested that other organisations who are also able to bring these public prosecutions should be stopped, that the government needs to take a a look at this? I mean, I just, just Google searching the Electoral Commission, Companies House, the Care Quality Commission. These are all organisations that can bring prosecutions.
Yes. So my understanding, and I'm no lawyer, but I think most companies, in fact, can bring private prosecutions. So it's not a case, I think, of a particular special dispensation for the Post Office. But the issue that you raise as to whether the Post Office and other public bodies or government-owned bodies are in a particular circumstance such that it's not appropriate that they have that ability is something that Alex Chalk is considering. And that's something that Kevin Hollingreight made clear to Parliament yesterday. So we'll have to wait a little bit longer to see what the conclusions of those deliberations are, but it's something that we're looking at.
It was something you would welcome?
Well, I'd need to wait to see, I think, to see what the conclusions were and what the reasons for those conclusions were. But it is something that we are taking seriously and having a thorough look at.
Final question on the Post Office. What about Paula Venables and the petition to remove her of her CBE? Do you think that is useful, or do you think that she is being treated as a scapegoat?
Well, I think once, and I'm sorry to keep coming back to the inquiry, but, people, and I think actually those who have been impacted by this terrible situation, most of all, expect to get robust answers to all the questions that are being asked. And I think the inquiry itself, of course, will answer a lot of questions around those that were involved at the very top of the Post Office. But look, in terms of honours being removed and the CBE being removed and that issue, that's a matter for the Independent Forfeiture Committee. But I'm very clear, the government's clear, the Prime Minister's very clear that in the event that that committee decided to have a look at possible removal of that honour, then looking at that would be something that the Prime Minister and I and others would support.
And Ed Davey, do you think there are questions for him? He was the minister in charge of...
Well, he was, and those are big questions which he's being asked in a very robust way, and I think it's for him to answer those charges.
OK. You're here to talk about a new government plan to help renters. The government's announcing today extra financial help to help some renters. How would that work?
So if you're renting in the private rental sector, what you'll have experienced is rising rents over quite a long period now. So rentals are becoming difficult to afford in many circumstances. If you're on a means-tested benefit, what we're doing as from April is for 1.6 million people in those circumstances, giving them more support. So that's on average £800 for 1.6 million people, £800 per year to help them. And it's important, firstly, from a cost of living point of view, but secondly, also in terms of the Department of Work and Pensions, and work is at the heart of what I'm driving at as a minister, to make sure that people are secure in their properties, able to move, for example, to parts of the country where the work is, where rentals may be a little bit higher. And so it's really providing them with a lot of extra support.
Some would argue, though, that the best thing you can do for renters is build more homes. The government's not meeting its targets on home building.
Well, we're confident that we'll meet our manifesto commitment for 1 million new builds across this
300,000 a year, and
across this Parliament. Well, the aspirate Michael Gove has spoken at length about the plans and the changes to the national policy framework and league tabling, local authorities, and lots of things that we're doing in that space, such that we are on, we think, a trajectory by the mid-2020s to be hitting that target of 300,000. But we have built about 2.5 million new homes since 2010. So there is progress being made, but we do need to build more.
It needs to be faster. Mel Stride, good to talk to you. Thank you very much.